So glad you're with us for our 5th session. And in this session, we're really asking a question that anybody who cares about students, anybody has had to wrestle with. How do we motivate this generation to care? And this has been a question I think every generation has asked, but there's so many distractions in this generation, so many things they can fill up their time with. How do we get them to think about spiritual things? And the reality is not that most kids are walking around saying, how do I make sense of the Trinity or the problem of evil or how do I know the Bible's true? But I've learned in my experience, an awful lot of young people, if we approach it the right way, really do want to ask and consider spiritual questions. Now you have a story that's kind of framed the way you think about this issue of motivation.
Yeah, I think the biggest danger right now maybe to theism is not atheism. It may just be what we could have started to call apathyism. How do we deal with people who just don't seem to care? I've got a district attorney that I work with on my cases constantly. We're together during a trial. We might be together every day for 12, 14 hours a day. His associate, Ethan, is a guy who is very passionate as a non-believer, but my buddy John couldn't care less. And so Ethan and I will be talking about spiritual things the entire day while we're working and preparing a case. And at some point, John will say, Ethan, stop. If Jim thinks you're interested, this conversation will go on all day and we'll be wasting all kinds of time. Jim doesn't waste his time with me, Ethan, because he knows I don't care. And I thought to myself, that's sadly true, that it's harder to share truth with John because he's apathetic about it. He doesn't care. I might as well be talking about broccoli. He doesn't care about broccoli either. So the question becomes, how do you generate this kind of passion? And I think one of the things I've learned is that if you want other people to be passionate about what you're passionate about, they better see that passion in you. And I think we all take on the character of our, the CEO sets the character for the company. Your pastor probably sets the character for your church. As a dad or a mom in your family, you set the tone for your family.
That's right.
And if I'm not passionate, if I see, for example, that my own children are not passionate, I very seldom will say, they got a problem. I'm thinking, I got a problem. I remember as a youth pastor, I thought this all the time. If my audience feels like they're not engaged in this content, is that a them problem or is that a me problem? It might be a me problem. So I think we have to first model the kind of passion we want to see reflected in others, right? Especially for young people.
Yep.
I think beyond that, though, we have to think about there are barriers. There are sometimes obstacles that stand between you and a passionate experience in your faith. And you have to help young people, I think, remove those obstacles. And you have to help older people do it too. Lots of times what the obstacle that's standing in our path is sin. It's undisclosed sin. It's the stuff we don't want to talk about, but there's a reason why I'm hostile to the things of God. There's a reason why I'm hesitant to engage in spiritual conversation. It may simply be that I have a sin issue that I don't want to expose, or that I'm not even comfortable, or that I think won't fit in that worldview. So we have to be honest, I think, with people and help them remove the obstacles. Sometimes the obstacle is just that I'm busy with stuff that is I've got bad priorities. I mean, I hate to say this, but probably if you're watching this video and you're a youth pastor, you know the struggle trying to do any kind of activity if there also happens to be a basketball tournament on that weekend or a soccer tournament. Good luck convincing your parents that this thing we're doing over here
is important.
Should be as important as that tournament, right?
That's hard.
It's hard. And I have to help young people understand why they should prioritize this. But I know I'm not the only one. I think we learn so much from stories, right? Because we have that's where wisdom comes from. You've got some stories that have made you wise in this area.
On your first point about passion, Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 7 says, love Lord God, your heart, your soul, mind, your strength. Right. And then it says to pass these on to your kids, walk along the road when you lie down. Right. Why does it say love God first? Because we need to look in the mirror and cultivate a relationship with God
have that relationship?
And model it for our kids.
That's right.
I have a friend that we were in conversation for years, starting in junior high. We talk about spiritual things. And he was only interested in the level that he likes a good conversation, liked to push back, didn't believe in God, appreciate our relationship. And I never was over the top, but just tried to appropriately have conversations about God and never was interested. All of a sudden, out of the blue, he calls me and I'm like, hey, why are you calling? This is years out of college. And he goes, well, you teach your students how to defend the faith, right? I said, yeah. He goes, where do you start? I about fell over because why is he now interested calling me? And what happened is he had a very close friend in his life who went through just kind of a medical emergency. And I'll never forget it. He said, it woke me up to my mortality. His heart was not open, But when something bad happened, his heart was open. The reality is, and this is hard for me as a parent, it's hard for me as a speaker, if some kids don't want to listen, they're not open, I can't force them to. People walked away from Jesus in the flesh. But why did he come to me? We had a relationship.
That's an important point.
The relationship was there. Second, he knew that I cared about the issues and I was thoughtful. He wanted truth. So sometimes when somebody's not motivated, we build a relationship with them, not just to win them over, but because we love them, and we pray for them. And we just hope that when their eyes are open, we're the kind of person they come to. Now, another motivating factor you talk about is too wise for every what?
Yeah, I think this is the one thing I hope, and we've talked about these strategies and how to employ these strategies, and my hope is that this is one of those things that will stick with people so they know, well, what can I do? How can I change my interaction with my students, with my kids in my pastorate, with my own children? Well, if all you did was move from kind of what's to too wise for every what, I think you would change every conversation you have. Here's what I mean. We often will tell our young people what we believe. We're trying to pass this on to them. We love God and we're passionate. And we want to just tell them what we believe. But it doesn't really help if we don't give them the too wise. And I think the too wise actually turns this concept toward passion, whatever truth claim you're making, toward passion. The first why is simply, okay, why is that true? Okay, I know you believe this, Dad, I know, but why do you believe this? I need to know that because I got a lot of competing noises, a lot of competing voices in my head. The second why, I think, is the passion why. Okay, I know what you believe and I know why you believe it, but why should I care? How does this apply to me? Now, my problem with John has been that I have not been able to convince him of why he should care. And sometimes when you're really successful in a situation, you think you're self-made. And I think self-made people often don't know why, don't understand why this would matter. Because it seems like I'm doing okay by myself as I am. But that shift from just giving what's to giving too wise for every what, that is the difference. You've taught a lot of students. My daughter was in your classes.
That's right.
So tell me, when you're in the classroom, do you have a strategy that's specific, maybe just for parents or for educators, that you could use in a classroom to make this work?
Sure. In the classroom, say I teach on creation or the resurrection or some theological issue. At the end, I'll always look at my students and I'll say, who cares? Why does it even matter that Jesus rose from the grave? And then I try through questions to make a connection, such as, could believing this shape the way you view death? And get them to try to make those connections. It goes from abstract to personal and experiential. Speaking on, say, creation, I'll say, could the issue of God creating us matter for something like, say, an eating disorder? And they first look at me like I'm nuts. And I'll say, well, at the heart of an eating disorder, amongst other things, could be that somebody doesn't properly see and understand the beauty and goodness of being made in God's image. How do we incarnate that truth? So it's really simple. Is I'll often just ask people at the end of teaching something in a classroom, why does it even matter? And I don't just give them the answer. I try to pull it out from them because they learn during that process. And I think this is important for students because especially we've talked about worldview and how many belief systems are competing for their lives and just for them to live and follow. Just this past weekend, I was at an event with my dad, and we were speaking an entire weekend on pornography and how it affects a church and relationships. And a mom brought up her 11-year-old son. First off, 11 or 12, first off, I thought, good for that mom, bringing him and exposing him to an issue as important as this, being willing to relationally take him to hear truth. If every mom or dad did this in the church, it would change everything.
Right.
But she said, I want you to hear something my son has to say. He walks over and he goes, I've been told my whole life, which is probably the last 3 years since he's 11, but that's how he perceived it, that sex should be reserved for marriage and that porn is wrong. But nobody told me why. You think we can raise a generation telling them what to believe without why? There's no way they're going to hang on to their faith.
Yeah, it's too what's for every why.
And if they hang on to their faith, they're not going to have vibrant convictions when they're tempted in their life, whatever issue it is. That's one of the most important things, teaching pastors, parents, giving them that why behind the what, at least two of them. We hope in this session you've just seen the importance of why kids need to know why they believe. That's going to move from a belief to conviction. Looking forward to our next session when we get even more specific and talk about how love trains this generation. We'll see you then.